In this lesson, we're starting a Viper that is already up and running, and we'll learn how to taxi to the runway and take off. Before we taxi out though, let's set up a few more items that we did not cover in the cold start lesson. Press spacebar when you're ready. On the altimeter, verify the current air-filled altimeter setting of 30.04 inches of mercury is set. You may rotate the pressure setting knob with a mouse wheel to select a new setting if it becomes necessary. You'll also verify the altitude display on the HUD matches the altitude on the altimeter within plus or minus 75 feet. Barometric altitude is displayed on the scale on the right side of the HUD. Press spacebar to continue. Then, select between electric and pneumatic modes with the lever. Electric mode uses altitude determined by the central air data computer, while pneumatic uses pneumatic pressure sensed by the pitot-static system. These should read within plus or minus 75 feet of one another. Set it back to electric mode when you're done. Put simply, the altitude displayed on all sources should match with no significant errors. Press spacebar to continue. Now, set up your anti-collision, position, and formation lights as you desire. The formation lights, or slime lights, are low-intensity green lights that aid in close formation flying. Position lights are red and green lights to mark the left and the right sides of the aircraft. And the anti-collision light is the white strobe on the tail. Typically, all lights should be on and flashing for taxi and takeoff unless blackout conditions are necessary. When done, press spacebar. Time to set up your internal lights. The top three knobs on the interior landing panel control the intensity of the lettering of the panels themselves. The two console and instrument dials control floodlight in the left and right consoles and instrument panel. The malfunction indicator light switch sets the intensity of the caution and warning lights. You may also enable a flashlight at any time using the keyboard command Left Alt and L. Experiment with these and press spacebar when you're ready to move on. Next, we'll verify the EGI knob is set to nav. This is done after the INES alignment is complete and you're ready to taxi the aircraft. It should already be set on this mission. Press spacebar to continue. Now we're ready to get moving. Press the nose wheel steering and air refueling disconnect button on your stick, or press the S key. This will enable nose wheel steering and allow you to control your path using the rudder pedals. The nose wheel steering and air refueling light right of the HUD should illuminate to indicate nose wheel steering is engaged. Press spacebar to continue. To get rolling, slowly increase the throttle just past idle until you have forward movement. Then, return the throttle to idle. Gently test the brakes and nose wheel steering immediately after your aircraft begins to move forward. Press Z to steer left and X to steer right. Taxi forward and turn right on the taxiway. Okay, now we're on our way. Max taxi speed in f16 is about 30 knots, but be sure to slow down to about 10 knots for turns. Keep your build up quickly the brakes are used for a standard period, so you do not ride the brakes to control taxi speed. Use one firm application of the toe brakes to slow the aircraft if you need to. Keep the throttle idle and only advance it if you need to speed up. Let's turn left and hold short of the runway. Come to a stop as you approach the runway, and we'll make sure the aircraft is ready for takeoff. Apply the brakes and hold right here. A series of last-minute checks need to be made just prior to entering the runway. Some airfields have armed D-arm areas and may be temporarily parked at to keep the aircraft clear of other traffic. You may also perform these checks while parked on the taxiway as we are now. Press spacebar to continue. First, set the probe heat switch to probe heat. This should be done at least 2 minutes prior to takeoff if icing conditions exist. Delay selection of probe heat as long as possible prior to takeoff if icing is not expected to prevent overheat and damage to probe components. Next, verify the Alt flap switch is set to normal. Then, just inboard the manual trim panel, check the needles on the trim indicators are centered. This is the final verification the trim settings are correct for takeoff, but that have not been inadvertently changed. Center them if you need to using the trim knobs or the trim controls on your stick. Press spacebar to continue. Now, verify the engine control switch is set to pry and the guard is down. Verify your speed brakes are closed and the canopy is closed and locked. The yellow handle should be down and the canopy warning light on the right eyebrow should be off. Press spacebar to continue. Set the store's configuration switch as required. In general, set Cat 1 for air-to-air loadouts without external wing tanks. Set Cat 3 for air-to-ground loadouts or any loadouts with external wing tanks. We have external fuel tanks with air-to-ground stores loaded, so set it to Cat 3. Press spacebar to continue. Next, we'll verify the external fuel tanks are feeding. Set the fuel quantity select knob to external wing and check the quantity. Wing external tank should feed first and have lower quantity than an engine start, somewhere just below 2,400 pounds. If a centerline external tank were installed, it would feed first and we have to check its quantity instead. Press spacebar to continue. Set the fuel quantity select knob to internal wing and check the quantity. The internal wing tanks are fed from externals and should be full, or about 550 pounds. Press spacebar to continue. Now, set the fuel quantity select knob back to normal. This allows the automatic forward fuel transfer system, trap fuel warning, and bingo fuel warning to operate properly. Press spacebar to continue. Stow the targeting pod if installed by selecting the targeting pod control page on the MFD and selecting standby. This is done prior to takeoff and before landing to prevent foreign object damage to components. Press spacebar to continue. Then, lower the ejection safety lever. This arms the ejection seat and allows ejection when the ejection handle is pulled. This is delayed as long as possible to prevent inadvertent ejection on the ground. Egress through other means is usually preferable. Press spacebar to continue. Last, check that the engine oil pressure is reading normal between 15 and 65 psi and all caution and warning lights are out. Press spacebar to continue. At this point, we're ready to take the runway. Go ahead and taxi out and turn left to line up on the center line. Come to a stop and we'll run a quick lineup check and walk through the takeoff sequence. Okay, roll forward until you're lined up with the runway and hold the brakes. Verify the parking brake is disengaged and the anti-skid switch is set to anti-skid. This will prevent the brakes from locking up and blowing your tires if you need to abort the takeoff and come to a stop quickly. Press spacebar to continue. This is going to go quickly, so I will describe the entire sequence, then we'll run through it step by step. First comes the lineup check. You will keep the brakes held, run the engine up to 90% RPM, and check for normal indications on your engine instruments. You will release the brakes, increase throttle to full, and engage the afterburner. Maintain track down the runway using the rudder pedals, the ZNX. You will disengage the nose wheel steering at about 70 knots when the rudder becomes effective. As you approach your takeoff speed, about 170 knots in this case, pull gently back on the stick to raise the nose about 10 degrees. You can use the gun cross and the pitch ladder in the HUD as a guide. The aircraft will become airborne and start to climb. Raise the landing gear while still below 300 knots and you're continuing to fly the aircraft along the runway heading. If you're ready, let's go ahead and give it a try. I will talk you through it as we go. Press spacebar to continue. Okay, hold the brakes, W, and advance the throttle to 9% RPM. Check the engine instruments for hydraulic oil pressure warning light off, oil pressure between 25 and 65 psi, F-tip 935 degrees or less, hydraulic A and B pressure between 2850 and 3250 psi. Then, release the brakes and advance the throttle to full. Now, use gentle rudder inputs as NX to maintain track during the runway. Disengage nose wheel steering. Yes. We are approaching takeoff speed. Gently pull back on the stick to raise the nose about 10 degrees. Okay, we are airborne. Raise the landing gear, G. We will lose a little lift as the trailing edge flaps your track, so be sure to maintain the climb. Now, maintain your current heading and reduce throttle slightly. Congratulations, you have just taken off in the Viper. We will pick up next time for a look at landing. You can end the lesson now by pressing the escape key or continue to fly around.
altitude, altitude.